love to hear a little bit about your story, kind of what led you up to where you are today, a little bit about the family, just kind of how you spend your time, so we can get to know you better.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm 60 years old, which is sometimes hard for me to admit. I feel like I'm a teenager sometimes, right?
That's the best way to be then.
Yeah. But 60 years old, I'm married to a great woman. We have 7 children, ages 13 through like 36. We have 7 grandchildren. And we just finished. We had 2 foster kids that were with us. They're 4. They're siblings, but they weren't twins. They were 9 months apart. And they just, on September 27th, they left us to be reunited with their mom after being with us for 2.5 years.
Oh, so wow.
Really longer than we thought, but it ended up being the mom made great progress and was able to get sober, and so they've reunified the family. So it's really encouraging.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, but live in Tampa, Florida. Lived here since my dad worked for a big corporation. When I was growing up, we moved around a lot. I went to Florida State University, played on the golf team there. Was kind of a walk-on, a fringe player, and then realized that that I was not going to be good enough to earn a decent living. And so I kind of decided to focus on business, worked for IBM in Tallahassee while I was in college, which was a great experience. Went to work on Wall Street for a few years and then joined a family business in Tampa. We were in the equipment business. We sold excavators and forklifts and yard spotters and anything for moving anything around or storing anything. So we did that.
Right.
Yeah. So, that was, and 7 years ago we sold the business. And I was I worked with the new owners for like 1.5 years, and the good guys out of Texas, but just felt like God had something else for me to do. I didn't really know what it was, but I knew it wasn't staying there. So I left. And was going to become I went to strategic coach with Gino Wickman, and I was going to be an EOS implementer. That's what I was going to do. I was going to be an EOS implementer. And then there was just something, God's like, I read this book, Halftime, written by Bob Buford, and I'm like, I've got this opportunity to recalibrate my life. Maybe there could be something more than we did EOS in our business, and we had great success, but maybe there was something more for me. So 5 years ago, I became the chair, and so I'm the principal chair for C12 of Tampa Bay. In 2019, I was the Rookie of the Year, won all kinds of awards with C12. But I think the most important thing for me is I feel like God had been preparing me my whole life to be a C12 chair.
Yes.
Right. So it's a great thing when your experience and your gifting and your passions, when they all can line up to your, so, and a lot of people don't get to experience that. So
absolutely.
What about you? You're a military guy or former military guy. Maybe you're always a military guy. I don't know. So tell me you.
Yeah. So I spent 13 years with the Army Rangers. I got medically retired in 2019. Spent my whole time down here in the Savannah area at 1st Ranger Battalion. So that's where I met Mary Lane, and her family lives down here. I love this part of the country.
Where are you from?
So I'm originally from north of Atlanta, from up in the Roswell, Georgia area. So it was kind of perfect because I was far enough from home to be away, but I still got to see my family. And now my parents are still close enough to be very involved with their grandchildren. They live in Blairsville now, up on the kind of North Carolina border. But
Fort Benning, is that where you were?
No, so so Fort Benning is in Columbus, Georgia. So that's out to the west.
Okay.
The biggest base here is Fort Stewart, which is actually bigger than Columbus, and that's where Third ID is. But the Rangers we were real fortunate. We are on this very small little airstrip called Hunter Army Airfield, and it is right there in the south side of Savannah. It's very small. We're pretty much the only ones there. So it's a pretty cool place to be stationed.
That's where the Rangers are.
That's where 1st Ranger Battalion is.
Okay.
You have 3rd Ranger Battalion and all of headquarters, all of that's at Fort Benning in Columbus. And then you have 2nd Ranger Battalion is in Fort Lewis, Washington. This is the best place to be because not only is the climate great, but the base we're at, it's so small that you're basically in downtown Savannah where we're stationed, where Fort Stewart's about 45 minutes away. So very fortunate. I love the area. I love saltwater fishing. You know, the cost of living is very affordable down here. I can play golf year round, which we are going to come back to that because I did not know you were an avid golfer. Are you still golfing a lot these days?
Much. I have clubs and they ride around in the back of my pickup truck, but I don't. One of my reasons for hiring a VA was to try to golf more. So, but I just don't really, you know, with a big family and this important work that I'm doing, it's like, you know, I'd rather sit and read a book than or spend time with my wife than golf. But so what did you do in the Army? I know you were a Ranger, but what did you do? Like
essentially, I was a gunfighter, right? So I came from the infantry line of MOS.
You're an officer?
No, I was enlisted. So I did everything from, you know, private up to platoon sergeant in the Rangers before I hit this point where the knees were giving out and I had a last surgery and, you know, it just didn't get me back to where I could be. You know, it's not that I'm hobbling around everywhere, but, you know, you can't be a Ranger platoon sergeant on the side of a mountain with a busted up knee leading, you know, 80 people. So I just couldn't continue to do that path. And so the business came together during that period of time.
Well, my oldest son was a Navy SEAL. He was in SEAL Team 1.
Yep.
Was a breacher, got injured in Yemen, rescuing a Saudi pilot. And so he got full medical disability, pretty serious TBI, right? That kind of took him out. So so it's I the kind of things that you guys do, the special forces operators, the things it's physically super hard on you. And that you were in for 13 years.
Yeah,
that's a pretty long time as an enlisted guy, right? I mean, I know when you get up to the ranks of being a sergeant, right? All those guys have been in a while, but that's physically pretty tough guy.
It definitely takes its toll on the body, you know, and especially during those years I was in, because that was pretty much the height of the war. So we were deploying every year, you know, it was nonstop training cycles. You understand the op tempo. So I did 9 combat deployments, should have done about 14, but because of injuries, I had to sit out a few. And we just hit that point where my body couldn't do it anymore. And I had no intention of staying in and riding some desk or doing something like that. You know, I'm a working dog. So if I can't work in there, don't put me at a desk job.
It's like my son. He said, I'd rather be a SEAL than when I want to be an officer. Right. So he went to college, but he was an enlisted guy. And I said, why? Because when you're enlisted, you get to do cool stuff. When you become an officer, you don't get to.
You have way more fun.
Yes, it's no good. So
you have way more fun. I agree. Even if I had a college degree, which I don't, I was never a very good student. I was not built for school. I would have still taken the enlisted route. You know, and there's some good programs later on that guys take for like PA programs and physical therapy kind of tracks. And I think those are great, but you know, I wanted to go fight in a war. I didn't want to do paperwork, and not saying all officers do it, but they have a very limited amount of time where they're with the boys fighting the fight, and then they just move on. And it's very political as well. You know, the enlisted world doesn't get political till really you hit about E7, and then it gets kind of nasty with the politics. But it was an amazing way to make a living. And it's interesting, you know, because I said I didn't want to have a desk job, and now here I am making a living through a computer screen, which has been an interesting experience, but it's been an amazing purpose that God has helped build in our lives. And I really care about this mission of pouring into these military families. It's just very unfortunate, the situations that they're in, and especially the military spouses. You know, not only is no one thanking them, not only do people not know what they go through, but they are the linchpin for most of these veterans for how the rest of their life's going to be. Are they going to spiral? You know, having that strong spouse in your corner when these guys are going through these dark times, is going to be the key to pulling them out of these bad places. And I don't think military spouses are prepared enough when their husbands transition. And I don't think there's enough emphasis on their marriage.
Yeah, my son and he and his wife, believers, they got divorced. They had a kid, they got divorced. It was to all of the things and she was not really equipped at all. I mean, they were doing, and when you're an operator, right, you get treatment outside the VA, right? I mean, you can there's a lot of support and a lot of help that's outside the VA, but it was all about it was about him and physically getting him better. There was not really much to care for their family, not much zero support for her, really.
Yes.
And their marriage just kind of came unraveled, and we kind of watched it. It was very sad. So I'm a huge fan of what you guys are doing. The first time I talked to your wife, she talked about, well, we used to have all these people around our house, and we had this table at our house, and we gathered around the table. But now our table is a lot bigger, right? We've got all these military families around our table, and they live all over the country. And it's kind of like, I'm like, wow, what a beautiful allegory. What a really cool way of looking at it. So I think that what you guys are doing is amazing. And
I appreciate that. And it's not just, we actually physically had 3 families staying with us all weekend this past weekend. We had 7 kids under 5. Every crack and corner of this house was filled, but it was a blessing. I think one of the kind of overarching things that we feel called to do is build community,
right?
Build community through this business. And it can be done, and it can be done in a remote environment. But ministry in the marketplace has to be the forefront of that. And C12 has just been such a game changer for us, opening our eyes to what is possible, to the reality that this business does not belong to us. It is ours to steward for God's kingdom. And man, it's just I did my forum yesterday, and every time we walk away feeling like our cup's been filled.
So you both are part of C12?
We are both members.
You go together, or you go to?
We go together.
Okay.
We go together, but they keep us separated.
Okay.
So there's only
Savannah is a great place. I'm coming there this weekend, actually.
Are you really? What are you
playing in a soccer tournament? And I'm getting up. So my son's got a state. He's in the playoffs for football. One of my sons. And I got to get up at like 4 a.m. and drive to Savannah because she's playing in a soccer tournament somewhere in Savannah. But we were a JCB dealer.
Yes.
So I would come to Savannah at least once a quarter. I love Savannah, the downtown area. I'd stay different hotels downtown. I think the springtime is the best, but Savannah is a beautiful place, a beautiful city, the architecture and all the gardens and the food, and it's a great place.
Yes. And I don't know if you've been here in a few years, but it's exploded with growth. Downtown's exploding, a lot of multifamily, a lot more hotels are being built. The ports are being expanded.
Yeah.
The industrial's blowing up all along 95 and 16.
Well, because of the port, right? It's a deep water port, and you can bring everything in there, right? So it's all the things that are, it's maybe not the same, right? So Pooler is where JCB was, right? So that whole area, I remember over the years, used to be nothing.
Correct.
And it just kind of like, to your
so
point.
I'm about 20 minutes from Pooler, and all, like you said, Pooler used to be nothing, and now it's exploded. All of that growth is coming at me. So my area, which used to be in the country out here in Effingham, is growing, mainly because of the Hyundai opened their first electric vehicle battery plant here. They cleared 1,800 acres. It's bringing in like 8,000 jobs. So between Gulfstream and the military and the ports, now this place, the colleges we have here, a lot of jobs. And it's fine with me because they're just driving my property value up. I don't want to be in town. I'll move further out, get me some more land. We homeschool.
Milledgeville's not that far, right? So Georgia Southern isn't far from where you guys are.
Statesboro, Statesboro's not that far. And then Statesboro actually bought another college in Savannah, which was Armstrong. So now they have a campus in Savannah. They have a campus in Statesboro.
You got SCAD, which people come from all over to go to SCAD. I mean, it's just a cool place, right? For sure.
It is. It is. I was very fortunate. There's a lot worse places you can be stationed in the military than this city right here. So, I'd like to talk a little bit more just kind of about your forums. You know, I'm a huge advocate for C12. It's part of our story. What would you say, what is the thing that you enjoy most about leading these C12 forums and being a chair?
I kind of wear two hats. I'm a principal chair, right? So I'm responsible for, I've got 4 other chairs, right, that I work with, right? And then I have 3 CEO forums that I lead in 1 key player forum. So it's a pretty busy 34, I think, CEOs, 12 key players, right? Personally that I work with. But I think, my kind of like my personal kind of mission, right, is to move people to God's agenda, right? That's kind of what I feel like God has called me to do.
Yes.
So it's just this really cool and incredible thing. Most people join C12 because they want to do better in their business, right? They're not thinking about the greater purpose piece, right? It's, geez, I'm working a lot. I feel really isolated and alone. I'd really love to be part of a like-minded group of people that I could bounce things off. Maybe I could learn to, I bought this business because I thought I'd have more freedom than being an employee. And now what I've realized is I don't have that. I'm working all the time. So I think most people join C12 because they want to improve things in their personal life potentially, and they want their business to be more profitable. So I just think it's really cool to get a front row seat to see how people's eyes open over time, and everybody kind of comes into C12. They're kind of like a construction project. They're all at different phases of development and different beliefs about this whole idea of business as a ministry. And who owns the business? Some of them, I own it. Others, well, God owns half and I own half. And then others are kind of like where you and your wife are. Well, we're just the stewards of this business. We don't really own it. It's God's. And what should we do with it? So I guess the coolest thing is just to see how people's eyes are opened over time.
Yes. Seeing those light bulbs go off.
Yeah. And then they hear somebody, oh, you put chaplaincy in. Oh, and you didn't get sued. And it's actually the greatest thing that you've ever done in your business career, right? And so you don't have chaplaincy, and you hear your fellow forum member talk about that, right? And it's like, they're like, well, if he can do it, maybe I could do it too, right? So, So I think that's the kind of the coolest thing. So,
and we were very much that way. We one of our first clients was a C12 chair, and he was like, hey, this is what C12 is. Let me connect you with the person in your area.
Steve. Yeah.
And we just, I was a gunfighter. She was an elementary school teacher. So we had no business experience, so we knew it was like, hey, we better surround ourselves with smart people who know way more than us to kind of cut the learning curve, to help us prevent some of these pitfalls. And that's what we went in there looking for. And the business as ministry was a light bulb that went off that we just weren't thinking in that perspective. And, I think everything in life is about how you frame it, right? It's all mindset. And when that mindset shift happened, it was like, of course, and let's go all in. And the chaplaincy was the same thing, Alex. It was like, how do we help with the mental health crisis that's going on? How do we help these families that we know are really stretched thin in their marriages and their parenting? And chaplaincy never even crossed my mind, which is interesting because I've always had a chaplain in the military.
Right.
And it was being in C12 that brought it to light. And when we brought in our chaplain, and everyone doesn't have the same experience, but God sent us this amazing woman, and we're doing it remotely, which a lot of people didn't think could be done. We actually had a salvation 3 weeks ago. We're still riding that high right now. But yeah, it's stuff like that. I think it was easier for us though, because we were just building the business. It was easy to kind of go all in. I do feel like it can be harder for some of these companies that I hear, it's like, hey, this was my daddy's company. It's been around for 60 years. And to try to really turn that ship into a full on business as ministry, I think can be a little more challenging for them. And I definitely think it's a bigger mental obstacle to overcome. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person, right? I think depends on the chair. I think we've got metrics that we look at, right, within C12, and some chairs are really good at it, right, and others not so good, right? So some of it also has to do with the chairs have different skills and abilities and backgrounds and proclivities, and some are like, I've lost people, right, because I'm like, look, I'm not gonna let up. Up front, we talked about this, right, that you wanted somebody who would speak truth to you,
right?
And I'm gonna do that, and if you don't like it, then maybe I've had 4 or 5 people that have left because they said, well, you're really serious about this business as a ministry thing. And I said, that's why I became a chair. I didn't become a chair to help make you richer. You're already rich.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, so I think part of it is that, and then it's patience, and it's everybody's at a different place, and every context is different. You got like, you can have a CEO in one of your forums that's part of a big corporation. And, he's not the owner per se. He's got P&L responsibilities. He runs a big part of like Siemens, right? There's a Siemens place there in Pooler. It's huge. Probably got 1,000 employees, or maybe a senior executive at Gulfstream could be part of C12. But they, their limit, their context is different than you and your wife's context, where you can go all in, like Texas Hold'em, you can go all in for Jesus. And there's, it's the 2 stakeholders at the table really that have to agree on it are you and your wife, right? And these are different. So it's just
that makes perfect sense. And obviously what you're doing is being successful, because you said you have 4 chairs working for you. You're running 3 CEO forums, a key player. When you first got started, what was it? Did you just start as running 1 forum, or did you take over a few forums? Kind of tell me about how that's been, the growth of that's been.
So I started out as a chair with nothing. I was not a C12 member. I didn't know if C12 was even really going to work. My son, I got the call from Germany that I was commissioned, and I started as a chair in June. The beginning of June, I got a call that it was in Germany, and my son they didn't know if he was going to live, right? So they're going to move him from there to Balboa Naval Hospital in San Diego, because he was in Team 1. That's where they are. So they're going to move him there. And then my father-in-law at the end of May was diagnosed with terminal bile duct cancer. And so, and his wife, my mother-in-law was not alive anymore. So my wife and I have to care for him. And so I start out as a chair. I've got a son in California that I'm going back and forth to California, trying to help him and his wife and their brand new granddaughter, right?
Yep.
My father-in-law is dying from cancer. He lives in the Tampa Bay area, so we're his caregivers.
Yes.
And it's a pretty rapid, fast cancer. And then we got, all these kids, and we didn't have foster kids at the time, and then I had all these guys I knew that needed C12, and every one of them told me no. So I kind of came to the end of myself, and I'm like, God, I don't have a lot of time to do this, because I got to go to California quite a bit. I've got to either help with the kids or help with my father-in-law. And I said, you need to tell me who I need to talk to, because my people that I thought, they all gave me the Heisman, and they're like, see ya. And I had like no prospects, 0, no prospects, and a super full plate. And I said, God, this has got to be you, because it can't be me. I don't know who to call. I don't know who to talk to. And God built the forums for me. God brought the people to me that he wanted me to care for, right? So it was just about me being obedient, listening to him. And so, and in like 3 months I had a forum, but it wasn't me.
Wow.
I didn't do it. It was a God thing. And then circumstances, January of 2020, COVID hits, right? That's like not a good time to be a chair. And then I bought the business from the previous guy because he had gotten sick and actually suffered an injury in a medical procedure and almost died.
Oh, man.
So like January 1st, I bought the C12, I became the principal chair.
Right.
And then we know, February and March, the whole world kind of comes unraveled. So again, just me trying to be faithful to what God has called me to do. And he's brought the people to me, right? It's not because I'm so great or I'm so smart or because I'm not, and I'm not that great a salesman. And it's just that, just abiding in the vine and just listening to him and just being obedient to the people that he tells me to go see, talk to, or brings to me even. So
it's amazing how he does that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot easier than doing it my way. My way is always hard and difficult, painful.
Yes.
All kinds of struggle. So
yes, It doesn't stop me from trying though sometimes.
Yeah.
God teaches me that.
Yeah, I'll go out of my flesh for a while and I'm like, man, what is wrong? It's like, oh yeah, I need to do it in his power, not my own.
Absolutely. Well, you're obviously doing something right and clearly following the path he has for you, because that's a lot of growth in 4 years. That's a lot of growth.
Yeah, well, and our business has grown and we've added chairs and we're serving more people. But part of it is I wanted to be an evangelist. I wanted to be that's what a missionary or evangelist. And my wife,
right.
You might want to do that, but that's not what I want. That's not what God's called me to do. So you need to find something else, right? And so for me, I became the chair because I have this heart for the lost and hurting people in our community. We've got 4 million people in the Tampa Bay area. Only 1 million of them have any kind of relationship with God at all. So there's 3 million people in the Tampa Bay area that don't know anything about God. And so, one of the ways that they can learn about God is through where they work. So yes. In my story, I became a Christian in 99. My first wife, so my 7 kids, 3 of them with my first wife, she left me for another man. I wasn't a Christian. And her father was a fairly famous politician in Florida, and she left me. I had to move out of the house, and some guy moved in, and it was terrible. My mom was dying from cancer. She was my best friend in the world. And so, you know what I said? I'm getting the hell out of Tampa, and I moved to Atlanta. I lived in Virginia Highlands.
Yep.
And I became up there. I became a straight up alcoholic and a drug addict, and ended up being homeless. And I lived on the streets and ate out of garbage cans. And on September 27th, 1999, I cried out to God and I said, if you exist, because I can't do this anymore. If you exist, kill me or deliver me. and wow. I'm like, I can't do this. And that very day, God sent a man to me. His name was Scott Henwood. He was the reporter of the decisions. So he was like the second most powerful man in the state of Georgia in the judicial system. But I did not know that. It's just some old guy. And he came to me, and I was at this place, and he said, hey, come over here. And I went over there, and he said, well, you know why I'm here, don't you? I said, I have no idea why you're here. And he goes, I'm here because God sent me to see you. Right? And he said, you look hungry. Let's go to dinner. And I'm like, okay, buy me dinner. And he told me that if I would draw near to God, he would draw near to me, and he would take my broken and shattered life and he would transform it. So I am truly this prodigal son, this man who was blind, but by God's grace and by his mercy, that my life was transformed by the power of the gospel. So for me, I want to be an evangelist. I sold the equipment business. I want to be a missionary. I want to be an evangelist. My wife's like, no. And I'm like, all right, well, what else could I do? And then I stumbled on this thing about like how to be a C12 chair. And I thought this would be great. I could use my love for business and turn all these business owners into missionaries. It'd be great. So that's kind of that was the appeal. And that's for me, what I thought was so amazing about C12. I went to Atlanta where they had this big conference, the current event that they're going to have next year. So I went to, it was in Atlanta, and I was like, oh my gosh, God is absolutely at work in C12. I want to join God in what they're doing. And I can take all these business owners and turn them into pastors, turn them into missionaries. And so that's kind of my thing. I want to help you thrive and flourish as a business, right? Because where there's no margin, you can't do all the things maybe you want to do. But at the end of the day, I'm really all about the greater purpose piece. So anyway,
Alex, that is an insane story. Like, I wish we had 2 more hours because I have so many questions.
It's a God story. It's a God thing. It's not me at all, right? It's just God did it. I didn't. It's like me being a chair. It's like, adding 10 members in 3 months. It was a God thing. It wasn't an Alex thing. It's just
100%. It's a God thing, but right. God works in so many different ways. And when God really shows up in these incredible situations, man, that's just powerful. And it's a God thing, but also you were faithful in that calling.
Well, and I would not really, I was defeated, right? It's like the prodigal son, man. You're feeding slop to pigs, right? And all you want, right? You're like, man, if I could just get a bunk in my father's house, if I could just be a hired hand, I would be good with that, right? And that's where I was. I was at the end of myself. And this guy said, look, man, if you this is about you repenting, changing directions, and embracing Christ, and your whole life will be transformed. And I'm like, I had nothing, right? I was completely defeated. The people say, well, you got to surrender. I didn't have to surrender because I was completely defeated in I had nothing. there was no good in me. And so I think I'm so prideful and arrogant that, I had to have nothing left for me to turn and cling to Christ. I couldn't rely on anything else, so. That's
amazing.
How much time do we have? We have I have more time if you do, but
I do.
You have questions you probably want to ask.
I know, but it's hard to get past this story. When I hear that, I know so many veterans that are struggling so bad. And that's just such a powerful story, right? Your life is a living example of the glory of God and the power that he brings when we lean into him. And there's a lot of people out there suffering, and a lot of them are still feeling sorry for themselves, and they're in this victim mindset. And I there's something there. Maybe they're not to the end of themselves quite yet, or there's some pride, there's some ego, but they're struggling to turn it in the right direction. And I can't imagine the lessons that you have learned on this journey. And it makes sense now why you wanted to go out and be a missionary.
Yeah, I mean, I had money, I had the ability to recalibrate my life, and I said, "This is what we're going to do." And my wife is like, "No, we got all these kids." No, I'm not. Maybe God may be calling you to do that, but He's not calling me to do that, right? And so,
yes,
like, okay, I need to probably figure something else out. Right?
Yes, well, it's. I highly encourage everyone marrying a smart woman to help keep you on track is always a big win. I'm a huge proponent for marriage, obviously. I just think that men left up to their own devices is a recipe for disaster. And I think marriage is an incredible structure to kind of hone and focus these tendencies that men have that can be used for greatness or can be used for the destruction of society. And I just think marriage is something that is worth striving for. And it has changed me as a human being, being married, having kids. My daughter saved my life. It's just an amazing thing. All right, man, you need to write a book.
People say that, but you know, my assignments are pretty clear. You know, husband, father, grandfather, C12 chair. Right? It's kind of pretty clear about what God wants me to do, and I have a lot of clarity and simplicity.
Right now.
Clarity and simplicity in my life is a good thing, right? You know.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
there's many reasons why I wanted to thank you, including the beginning when you were talking about fostering children. You know, Mary Lane's brother's adopted. I think adoption and fostering, I think it's an amazing thing, and it's not done well many times. And it's not like you were kidless.
No,
you had a pile of kids.
60 years old. We get 58, and we bring 2 4-year-olds into our house. I'm like, I told and what was good for me though, spiritually, I grew probably more in the last 2.5 years, because this idea about dying to yourself, where you just want to be. I'm 58. All my friends are sending their kids off to college, and they're launching them, and then we've got these 2. Well, they were 1.5 when they came to live with us, right? It was like, and it's like all the things that happen. There's a reason why God gives babies to young people.
I agree with that. But at the end of the day, it's like, what are you going to do? Launch your kids and then go play golf every day? I love golf, but life that is not bringing depth and meaning to your life. So, man, I absolutely applaud you, because I know those children have been blessed just beyond belief being in your home. I'm going to hit some of these specific questions because I'm really enjoying learning. Man, you just threw a curveball in there. Like, let me tell you real quick about the unbelievable impact God has had in my life. That is an amazing story. I hope you're not afraid to share it, because it is pretty remarkable. All right, we'll try to get focused in. All right. So had you ever worked with an assistant before you brought on Meredith?
Yeah. So in MacKinnon Equipment, I had an executive assistant for 10 years. So she was physical. She sat outside my office. We had 250 employees, 5 locations. Yeah. So I had an executive assistant, and she could almost like complete my thoughts, right? Because we'd worked together a long time.
Yes.
I was part of Strategic Coach. That's how I met Gino Wickman. And his dance thing was delegate everything but your genius, right? And I'm like, oh, what does that mean? He's like, I mean everything. Like, what is your unique ability? What did God create you that you can do that nobody else can do?
Yes.
And I'm like, well, and then I kind of worked on that, figured that out, and then I said about delegating everything but my area of my unique ability, my superpower, if you will. So, yeah. So I had her for 10 years. She was amazing, and and then they sold the business, and I leave, and then I got to like go out and buy stamps. Like, I didn't even know how to buy stamps. Right? It's like, because she'd been like my right arm, right? And I had all these people that did all these things for me. This month we did delegation.
Yes, we did.
And I did a few things, and that's all I did. So anyway, so yes, I had success. I was with Belay because I realized I start out as a chair. I'm doing everything myself. I don't know how to buy stamps. I type with my thumbs. There's a lot of things that I hate doing, and I'm terrible at. Right? It's not like I like it was, and I've got this stop doing list, but I didn't. So I tried Belay, and it kind of the person that I had. She was great. She started out great, but what ended up happening was her and her husband started these VRBOs. He was a professor at the Naval Academy, and that kind of took off. And so she became less focused, and they tried to find somebody else, but they didn't really have really good systems and processes, right? So the wheels kind of fell off the cart, so to speak. And then I'm like, well, I'll just do it myself, because it became harder. And I mean, really how I connected with you guys was Derek. So I got to know Derek because Derek is kind of, with Firefly, he's kind of like I know he's your implementer, right? But he called me, and it's how I got connected with your wife. He's like, look, man, I was just catching up with him. So I got to know him because I knew Gino, and it was, we have all these common things anyway. And so he's like, do you have a VA? And I'm like, no, I tried it. I had a virtual thing. I don't know if that's going to work for me. I had a physical one. And he said, you need to call them. And I said, okay, introduce us. So he introduced us, and because he said, it's absolutely changed my life. I'm ashamed to admit I've never had a VA really in a long time. I haven't. And they've changed my life. And he's kind of like, hey, if you're not happy, like, I'll give you all your money back. Try it for a period of time. If it doesn't work for you, I'll reimburse you your money. That's how I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah, but I know I won't have to give you them. I won't have to do it because it'll be amazing. So anyway, so you guys have been super.
What were your concerns? Because that's common. What were your concerns about having someone remote, especially since you had seen what it was like to have someone physically there?
And then I had a failed kind of remote experience, honestly. Because I knew instinctively, right, that I need to focus on a few things as a chair, right? There's so many things that I did that took up a lot of bandwidth and time that I was not good at. I disliked it. It just sucked the energy out of me. But I knew I needed to delegate and get somebody to handle these things, but I had didn't have a good experience. And so I was like, well, I guess this is just kind of my lot. I'm going to kind of be stuck here. So,
What are some of the big things that you've delegated that are real time sucks for you that are kind of chair specific?
I have 34 CEOs. The forums are easier, but the one-on-ones are difficult, right? It's like herding cats. And if you have 34 CEOs, some are on reoccurring, most of them aren't. Their schedules are really fluid and busy. And I probably spent, 30 hours a month trying to chase down all the CEOs.
Yes.
My scheduling was something that I was constantly, whether it was prospects or members or other things that I was doing, and then my email. In my other business, I didn't own any computers. I had a phone, and I never looked at my email.
Yeah.
I was free from email. I didn't ever. So my executive assistant managed my email. She managed my calendar and my schedule. And so I think that those things have been the greatest things that have given me freedom. And I think that my first quarter when I had Meredith, I added 4 new CEOs. I added two chairs. One of them, we decided to wait till next year, but I had my most productive quarter as a chair that I've had since I launched, right, 5 years ago, when I didn't have any members and it was just all business. All I had to do was just sell. That was it. And I didn't have any appointments and I didn't have any calendar, so it's the most productive quarter that I'd had in 5 years. My profit of my business. So it's maybe not a good thing to talk about as a C12 chair, but my profit for C12 of Tampa Bay, that's the work I do, plus the overrides that I get on everybody else. It's up almost 40% over the same period last year. And I would say that working with Meredith, she's been probably the single most important factor in making that happen.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
And then I'm working. I don't worry about, I have more freedom. I have more peace of mind. I don't worry. I'm still working more than what I would like. Right. But part of that's a season, right? So I've got a path to focusing more on the areas of my unique ability, because I don't really think that, I love being a chair and I'll always be a chair. I think that what I really need to do to fulfill God's vision and mission for our business in the Tampa Bay area is I need to be a chair to chairs. I need to find the right people and equip them to just be incredible C12 chairs. That's really kind of,
Yes.
The way to transform our community isn't going to happen by Alex just working with 36 CEOs, right?
That makes sense. And you sound very qualified to do that.
Well, God equips the called. I'm not that qualified, right? He'll give me everything I need to make that happen, right? That's what I believe. I've got clarity about what he wants me to do and the vision for what can potentially happen in Tampa Bay.
I think probably 99.9% of people in business, if you told them you never looked at your email, they would say that's impossible.
I did.
And I believe it.
You would print them for me, like on a piece of paper, and I would write on that, like make a note and give it back to her, and she'd reply on my behalf. I went 3 years and I never looked at my email. I had a rule that she created a rule that if I was CC'd on an email, it automatically got deleted. because that was all about people just, they're trying to cover their butts, right? Or keep me in the loop or whatever. Half my emails were, I was just CC'd on something, right?
Yes.
She created a rule. I said, well, just create a rule and you won't have to look at that anymore. And half the emails went away, right? It's kind of crazy.
You must have been exceptionally good at this month's content of leading that forum, because you sound like you really figured it out over the years, mastering delegation. And we run off of EOS as well. So I'm very familiar with all your verbiage. Pat Lencioni's Working Genius was actually very important for me to learn, where do my strengths really lie and how do I get away from everything else? And so you seem to have really figured out how to master delegating. And I'm not that great at it, but I know the great business leaders out there, they figure out how to do it and do it well.
I think the video, right? Even the guy looks totally different, right? In the video, the car guy, right? That he shows him when he buys the business, and he just looks like a mechanic.
Yep. And
then you look at him, he's sitting there, he's calm, he's relaxed, he's got a beard, looks like his teeth have been fixed. I don't really know, but it looks like a completely different person. And he would say, right, the delegation, right, that was the key to it. And that's why I think that you guys are great, because your system, your process, right? So part of the reason, like where Belay failed for me, they didn't have a very good system. They didn't hold me accountable to, okay, if you're going to have, it's virtual, so it's different than having somebody physically with you. So you have to build in the rhythms and the structure that allows you to stay connected to your virtual assistant. I had a half-an-hour call with Meredith this morning. Her and her husband closed on their house. He's a naval pilot. They're in Oklahoma City, which doesn't make sense to me. How can a Navy pilot be in Oklahoma City? But that's where he is. So they bought their house yesterday. They closed on their house yesterday. We still we didn't talk yesterday because she was kind of busy. And she's pregnant with her first child, due in April. And we had our call this morning, like half an hour, went through a bunch of things, looked at everything. I handed off a couple of things. We've got our rhythm kind of down and the tools that we use and all that. And she's going to work on some things when she's not painting, right? So what's awesome is it works for Caleb's out doing something. I guess he's at Lowe's buying things for the house. And she says, I got some time. I'll knock these things out. And so I'm just super system structures, processes, rhythms. But then I'm also tapped into your, if I can in any way help a naval family, right? It's kind of, my son was in the Navy. It just kind of happened that way. I didn't know what part of the service he was really in. But where we can support that family as they go to, I remember she said, I can't work the day he gets his wings. I said, you should take the next couple of days off. Don't do anything for me. Let's circle back in a few days, but celebrate that accomplishment that Caleb has done, right? So it's this thing, not only is it, You guys got good systems and processes and people and check-ins and rhythms, a lot of that, right? Which is good. But then it's also tapped. I don't know what belay was even about. I have no idea. But you guys are loving and caring for military families, right? And so tapped in with your mission, your vision, and your values. I'm like a fan because of what you guys are doing, right?
I appreciate
somebody's
that.
like, what are you doing for Veterans Day? I said, well, this is one of the things that we do every day, that I do every day. I'm connected with these people, and this is what they do. And they're like, oh, that's really cool, right? Wow. I said, yeah, you need a VA. You should talk to them. So
I appreciate that. And Alex, you're a perfect example of who we want to work with, because I want clients who share our values. I want clients who I know are going to treat my people right, because I value our service and I want everyone we interact with to be successful. But my mission, my heart is with my people.
right.
And I want to know that they're taken care of. And if somebody's not going to take care of them, they're not going to be a client of our business. And I know when I work with C12 chairs and C12 community, that those Christian values that they embody and that they inject into everything that they do, that's going to be transferred into their relationship with these people.
Oh, and our
And
members, right? So our members too are people who are,
Mhm.
everybody's kind of at a different place, but our members, I'm saying, hey, if you should talk to them, right? Delegation this month, I spent, I went back to the case study, right, of you guys that was a few months ago, right? I don't know when that was, but I said, look, this has been transformative for me. You guys know Meredith. What do you think? And they're like, she's amazing. How do you find somebody like that? I said, I didn't. It's this whole Dan Sullivan thing. It's we get stuck in the how. How am I going to do this? How am I going to? And he talks about, well, it's who, not how. Right.
That's right.
And I think that's a huge. We don't have to think about the how. Just automatically think who. So.
Right person, right seat.
Yeah. Well, that's yes. Yeah, but it's like. But Meredith is the who for me, right? And you guys are too, right? It's this, not how do I schedule my time? It needs to, automatically, reflexively, we almost think, well, who, right?
Yes.
So.
Well,
that's what I think like Titus Talent's good, right? So I'm referring people to Titus Talent because it's not how you're going to figure this out. It's a who. You need to contact the people at Titus Talent, and they'll be able to help you craft a talent strategy. Because if you don't have that, you're always going to be in the reactive mode, right? So,
yes.
And they're kind of a sister company with you guys, I think, somehow affiliated and connected, right?
Well, we know them through Derek, and love what they're doing.
I think they're owned by Firefly. I think Firefly owns them. They're in their portfolio of businesses. So what other questions do you have? I know
Dude, that was it. There was some great. First of all, thank you for opening up and being vulnerable, because my hope was to get to know you better and figure out how I can support you better in your mission. And hearing your story was fantastic. I love seeing God do work in people's lives. And your story is very inspirational. And then just seeing the growth that you've had. I know I'm in these forums. I know the impact you're making. And I get it when you say, hey, I need to be training chairs. You are a coach of coaches. And we have no idea the impact and how far that each one of these CEOs and your interaction with it, how far that reaches. I mean, it goes so far. I was talking to Buck the other day, and it's like, Buck, could you ever imagine in your wildest dreams how far this would reach? And he was like, no.
Yeah.
And it's just such an incredible.
Started C12 in Tampa. He calls me his grandson.
Does he?
Yeah, he's like, so I started it. Scott Hitchcock, who I bought it from, he did a really good job. Alex, don't screw it up. That's a lot of pressure, man. That's a lot of pressure. Easy.
I've been very blessed. So I sat with Mike Sharrow at a dinner at a Harvard event that Mary Lane went and spoke at, and he saw fit to introduce me to Buck. And so Buck has been pouring into me for a few months now. I can't even begin to,
because he's a Zoc.
That's right. So not only has he been pouring into me, which is just, I feel unbelievably blessed, but I'm a visionary, Alex. I can always see 10 to 15 years down the road, but I never really looked to my 70s and 80s of like, what would I want my life to look like? And then I met the Zakin, and I heard where he feels like God's calling him at this point in his life. And it was just like, I want to be you at your age. That's my finish line. And he's just such a special man. And
why don't you close this in prayer? I got 1 minute. I got another.
Let's do it.
I got to jump on. So go ahead.
Do it. All right.
Pray.
Lord, I thank you for this time with Alex. I thank you that he has followed your calling. I thank you for the incredible work that you have done in his life. I pray that he will impact so many people for your kingdom, and that you will use what you've done in his life to just move people. I thank you that we live in a country where we can own businesses, and not only own them, but we can run them for you. We can pray in our businesses. We can try to have a kingdom impact, and we can do it without persecution, Lord. I pray that will continue in our country, that we will have the religious freedoms to keep this country a light in the world. Please be with all the families that are out there serving in this country and outside in dangerous places to try to keep this safe, to try to keep us a beacon. Please be with them and be with their families that are left behind. I pray you will bless this large family that Alex has, all of these children. I especially pray that you will be with these foster kids. I pray that the mother has gotten her life together, that you will bring her closer to you so that she can mother the way that she's supposed to, and these kids will grow up. But I thank you for the blessing and the time that they had with Alex and his family. Please keep all of his children safe, keep him safe as he's traveling. And I just thank you for this time that you've given us together. And I thank you for the Father that you continue to be for us. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. It was a privilege to meet you and get to know you. I look forward to some point in time spending more time together.